Okay, y'all. Sit down. Lock your door. Put the phone on Do Not Disturb. Because what I'm about to walk you through is not a rumor, not a mixtape story, not some blog rewrite. This is the receipts. Curtis Jackson, the man the world calls 50 Cent, the same 50 Cent who turned a Queens block into a 9-figure fortune, the same 50 Cent who once made Forbes rewrite its rich list, the same 50 Cent who outnegotiated Coca-Cola executives in a boardroom before most rappers his age had learned to read a royalty statement. That same man walked into a federal courthouse in Connecticut and filed papers that said, in plain English, he could not pay his bills. Bankruptcy. Chapter 11. Signed and stamped. And the internet nearly broke. But here is why I need you locked in for the next few minutes, fam. Because everything you were told about that day was wrong. Everything the headlines screamed, everything the memes implied, everything your uncle repeated at the barbershop, wrong. What actually went down in that Connecticut courtroom in July of 2015 was not a fall. It was a chess move. And by the time you finish this video, you are going to look at 50 Cent completely differently, because he did not go broke. The man went to war. And the weapon he pulled out was the United States Bankruptcy Code. Stay with me. Because to understand the size of the move, you have to understand the size of the money that came before it. Curtis James Jackson III was born July 6, 1975, in South Jamaica, Queens. His mama Sabrina raised him alone in a neighborhood that ate weaker kids for breakfast. By 8 years old, his mother was gone. By 12, this kid was already on the corners of Jamaica selling product to grown men. That is not a bar. That is a biography. Everything the future mogul would ever learn about negotiation, leverage, silence, and timing was taught to him on those blocks before he was old enough for a driver's license. Business school could not touch that curriculum. And then, in the summer of 2000, before the world knew what 50 Cent was going to become, the story almost ended in a parked car outside his grandmother's house. 9 shots. Point blank. One of the bullets rearranged his jaw and lodged near his tongue, which is why, when Curtis Jackson finally spoke into a real microphone, that slurred, syrupy, unforgettable cadence came out, the voice that would go on to sell hundreds of millions of records. The bullet meant to end 50 Cent literally created the sound of 50 Cent. Let that sit for a second. Then Eminem heard a mixtape. Then Dr. Dre picked up the phone. Then Shady Records, Aftermath, and Interscope signed the deal. Then, on March 8 of 2003, Get Rich or Die Trying dropped and rewired the entire music business. 1 million units in 4 days. #1 on the Billboard 200 for 9 straight weeks. Into Club became the fastest-selling single in history at that moment. 15 million copies worldwide before the album cycle was even done. 50 Cent was not an artist anymore. He was the culture. And then he did something almost no rapper of his era did. He looked past the microphone. G-Unit Records with Tony Yayo and Lloyd Banks. G-Unit Clothing in partnership with Marc Ecko, split 50-50, generating tens of millions. The Get Rich or Die Trying film through Paramount and MTV Films. A video game with his name on the cover. Fragrances. Sneakers. Merch. A boxing promotion company co-managed with Floyd Mayweather. Curtis Jackson was not chasing a check. He was building a machine. But the move that turned 50 Cent from a rich rapper into a legend of American ownership, the move business professors would eventually teach in case studies, did not come from music. It came from a bottle of colored water. Watch this. The year is 2004. A little Queens-based company called Glasso is trying to grow a vitamin-infused water brand. Their marketing exec, Rohan Oza, a Coca-Cola veteran, spots 50 Cent sipping a bottle of Vitaminwater in a Reebok commercial. Something clicks in his head. He calls up 50's longtime manager, the late great Chris Lighty, and asks for a meeting. A standard celebrity endorsement is drafted, around $5 million, cash, sign here, smile for the camera. Any other artist in 2004 would have taken that check and cleared the room in 90 seconds. And 50 Cent looked at $5 million in cash and said no. Say it out loud. He said no. Instead, 50 Cent countered for a minority equity stake in Glasso itself, plus the rights to design his own signature flavor. That flavor was Formula 50, grape, with his face on the label. 50 Cent was not a spokesperson on this deal. He was an owner. And what happened after that is why we are still talking about this man in 2026. With Curtis Jackson's fingerprints on the brand, Vitaminwater sales exploded from roughly $100 million in 2004 to over $700 million by 2007. Then, on May 25 of 2007, Coca-Cola opened its checkbook and bought Glasso for $4.1 billion in cash. Billion. With AB. The exact number 50 Cent walked away with has never been officially confirmed, and it is one of the most argued figures in hip-hop history. Early reports claimed 10% ownership, which would have meant a $400 million payday. Later independent analyses put his real stake closer to 2.5%, a pre-tax windfall around $100 million, with post-tax estimates ranging from $55 million to $100 million. Forbes went with roughly $100 million. The Washington Post said 60 to 100. The Wall Street Journal landed in the same neighborhood. Whatever the exact digit, the shape of the story is undeniable. 50 turned a $5 million endorsement offer into one of the greatest celebrity investment paydays in the history of American entertainment. He later rapped about it with a straight face, that he took quarter water, put it in a bottle, sold it for $2, and watched Coca-Cola pay billions for the empire around it. It sounded like a brag. It was actually just a math problem he had already solved. At his peak, the machine he had built was terrifying. Music income, tour income, G-Unit roster money, G-Unit clothing, Vitaminwater equity, film work, television deals, video game royalties, fragrance lines, boxing promotion, and endorsements crawling across half a dozen industries at once. Forbes at one point pegged his net worth around $155 million, and even that number was probably conservative. He was not a rapper who owned businesses. 50 Cent was a businessman who still happened to rap. And then the sky started to fall. This is where most storytellers rush. I am not going to rush. Because the cracks that eventually forced 50 Cent into a bankruptcy courtroom did not appear overnight. They spread slowly, quietly, over years, through a mix of shifting industry math, one very expensive gadget play, and a legal decision that will make your jaw drop when we get there. First, the industry itself changed. Streaming ate the album. By 2009, when he dropped Before I Self-Destruct, first-week sales came in around 150,000 units, a huge drop from the Massacre era. By 2014, Animal Ambition, his first independent release outside shady Aftermath Interscope, performed modestly. The 9-week Billboard reign was not coming back. The dominance was cooling, whether anyone wanted to admit it or not. Then came the headphones. After Beats by Dre turned into a billion-dollar cultural event, 50 chased his own lane in premium audio. He first partnered with a company called Sleek Audio to develop his signature headphones. That partnership collapsed. Sleek later argued that Jackson had used their proprietary designs to launch his own competing brand, SMS Audio, without compensating them the way the contract required. The dispute went to arbitration. He lost. The number that came out of that arbitration ruling should be tattooed on every young mogul's forearm. $17,247,426. By the time interest aided in July of 2015, that single judgment had swelled past $18 million. It was the biggest debt on his creditor list. And SMS Audio, the company built to justify the whole detour, never punched through against Beats. Reviews were fine. Sales were flat. Market share never showed up. But the arbitration ruling was only round 1. Round 2 was named Lastonia Leviston. And this is where the rapper's own instincts as a battler turned into a legal grenade in his hand. Leviston was a woman who had previously been involved with Rick Ross. A private, intimate recording of her existed. 50, in the middle of a running public war with Rick Ross, obtained that video and posted it on his website to embarrass his rival. It was a tactic pulled straight from the mixtape era, dropped into a modern civil courtroom, and it detonated. Leviston sued. Invasion of privacy. The case went to trial in New York State Court in the summer of 2015. A jury came back with a $5 million compensatory verdict. Then the same jury reconvened, added another $2 million in punitive damages, and stamped the total at $7 million against Curtis Jackson personally. Do the math with me. $18 million to Sleek Audio. $7 million to Lastonia Leviston. $25 million in legal obligations landing on Curtis Jackson's desk in the same narrow stretch of weeks. Any single one of those numbers would rattle a normal fortune. Both at once could break it. On July 13 of 2015, Curtis Jackson walked into the United States Bankruptcy Court for the District of Connecticut and filed Chapter 11. On paper, the assets sat somewhere between $10 and $50 million. The liabilities sat in the same range. Later court documents refined it, roughly $20 million in assets, $36 million in debt. The headline that ran around the planet was brutal in its simplicity: 50 Cent is broke. And now I need you to hear me very carefully, fam, because everything the public thought that headline meant is not what actually happened. Chapter 11 bankruptcy is not what the average person imagines when they hear the word bankruptcy. It is not "I have nothing left, take my keys, take my stove, take my last dollar." That is a completely different chapter of the same law. Chapter 11 is a reorganization tool. It is the same tool General Motors used. The same tool American Airlines used. The same tool Macy's used. Corporations that were nowhere near broke have filed Chapter 11 to protect their assets while restructuring debt. And under U.S. law, Chapter 11 is fully available to individuals whose financial situation is complex enough to justify it. California bankruptcy attorney Mark Marcus said it plainly to Time magazine when the 50 Cent story was at full boil. He explained that Chapter 11 filers usually have many assets they are trying to protect while paying creditors what they would have received in a liquidation anyway. He was crystal clear: people who file Chapter 11 are not broke. They are insolvent, meaning unable to pay every debt as it hits its due date. And Chapter 11 exists specifically to solve that gap. That distinction is the whole story. 50 Cent was not out of money. He was staring at $25 million in judgments hitting at the same moment, in a form that would have forced him to dump long-term assets at fire sale prices just to write immediate checks. His income streams were still humming. His new television show, a little crime drama called Power on Stars that had premiered in 2014, was already building the audience that would turn it into one of the biggest cable phenomena of the decade. His G-Unit film and television production shingle was very much alive. 50 Cent was not begging in the street. He was choosing not to blow up his own empire to satisfy 2 lawsuits on their timeline instead of his. Filing Chapter 11 slammed the automatic stay into place. That is the legal button that freezes creditor collection while a reorganization plan is negotiated. His attorney said so directly, describing the filing as a way for Jackson to continue his work as an entertainer and businessman while pursuing an orderly reorganization of his financial affairs. Translation: he was not raising a white flag. 50 Cent was raising a court order. And 50 Cent himself was not shy about telling you exactly what he was doing. He went on social media and posted a photo of himself sitting in front of stacks of cash, captioned about Chapter 11 in a tone that was half joke, half warning. Anybody who read that post as reckless missed the message. The message was, "I am fine. This is a play." But the story had already outrun him. Every major publication in the country was running the same headline: 50 Cent is going broke. Memes multiplied. Late-night hosts had a field day. Even Forbes, which had pegged his net worth at $155 million just 2 months before the filing, publicly acknowledged the gap between their number and the bankruptcy documents. That admission only made the confusion deeper, because now readers were staring at 2 contradictory portraits of the same man. The confusion, honestly, is structural. For most regular people, bankruptcy equals poverty because for most regular people, that is what a bankruptcy filing looks like. But for a business or a high-net-worth individual navigating multi-million-dollar litigation, bankruptcy is a shield, not a coffin. One veteran bankruptcy attorney told CNBC at the time that Chapter 11 was, quote, "the drug of choice for celebrity debt problems." That is the industry saying the quiet part out loud. Now here is the part that separates 50 Cent from anyone else who has ever tried this move. He did not just file and wait. He counterattacked. While the bankruptcy case was still open, Curtis turned around and sued the law firm that had represented him during the Leviston sex tape trial. His claim was malpractice, negligence, and misrepresentation, arguing that if his own lawyers had steered him correctly, the $7 million verdict would never have landed the way it did. He demanded $32 million in damages. In December of 2016, he was awarded $14.5 million in that malpractice case. He then took roughly $13.6 million of those proceeds and pushed it directly into his bankruptcy settlement pile. Read that back to yourself. He used a bankruptcy filing to freeze his creditors, sued his own lawyers, won, and used the winnings from that lawsuit to pay off the creditors he had frozen. That is not the behavior of a broke man. That is the behavior of a fighter who understood the courtroom as another battlefield. And underneath all of it, power kept climbing. The show followed Ghost, a New York nightclub owner leading a double life as a drug kingpin, and it was ripping the top off Starz' ratings. Jackson held executive producer credits and equity in the underlying production through G-Unit Film and Television. Every week the show grew, his balance sheet grew with it, quietly, while the internet was still busy laughing. In June of 2016, roughly 11 months after he walked into that courthouse, U.S. bankruptcy judge Ann Nevins approved his Chapter 11 reorganization plan. Total repayment, approximately $23 million, spread across a court-approved timeline. The judge praised the parties for reaching terms that worked for both the debtor and his creditors. He kicked in an initial $7.4 million to start the schedule. The tension dropped out of the room. And then, on February 5 of 2017, the same court formally discharged Curtis Jackson from bankruptcy. Paid in full. Ahead of the original 5-year timeline. The final tally landed around $22 to $23 million to creditors. The case that had begun as an international headline about a fallen mogul ended with a judge's stamp and a closed file. The whole process, front to back, took roughly 18 months. Now tell me, does that sound like a man who lost? Here is what none of the 2017 headlines wanted to admit. The man who filed Chapter 11 in 2015 walked out of that courthouse in 2017 with his television empire not just intact but accelerating, his production company thriving, his income streams protected, and his creditors paid on his schedule instead of theirs. The plan worked exactly the way it was designed to work. And the second act after that filing might be more impressive than the first act before it. Power became one of the highest-rated series in Starz history. Then it spawned Power Book 2, Ghost, Power Book 3, Raising Kanan, Power Book 4, Force, and Power Book V, Influence, an entire cinematic universe of crime drama, all under the G-Unit Film and Television umbrella, all with his fingerprints on the executive producer credit. In 2023, 50 inked an additional development deal with Fox, expanding his footprint from premium cable into broadcast television, a place most cable-native producers never crack. Then came the real estate move. He leased a full studio complex in Shreveport, Louisiana, and quietly became one of the largest private property holders in that market. He kept building on the liquor side too, Sire Spirits pushing Branson Cognac and Le Chemin du Roi Champagne, sitting alongside his earlier F&B vodka partnership. And on stage, his live performance rate reportedly climbed to somewhere between $900,000 and $1 million per show. $900,000 per show, for a man the internet had buried in 2015. By 2026, the picture has settled. Curtis Jackson filed Chapter 11 in July of 2015 with roughly $20 million in assets and $36 million in debt. He exited in February of 2017 after paying about $23 million to creditors, recovered $14.5 million through a successful malpractice suit against his former legal team, and continued expanding Power into a cable and streaming empire with 4 active spin-offs and a broadcast deal on top. His net worth today is credibly estimated between $100 million and $300 million, depending on how you value the underlying production company. That is not a fall. That is a relaunch. So let me leave you with the real headline the culture never wrote in 2015. 50 Cent did not go broke. He used the United States Bankruptcy Code the same way he used a Reebok commercial in 2004, as leverage. He looked at a moment everyone else read as an ending, and he read it as a doorway. He turned a $5 million endorsement offer into a $100 million Coca-Cola payday. Then he turned a $25 million legal crisis into a court-supervised debt restructuring, a $14.5 million malpractice win, a full discharge inside 18 months, and a television empire that is still printing money on 4 different networks. The bankruptcy was not the collapse of the 50 Cent story. It was the machine that protected the next chapter of the story. And the fact that the culture spent 2 years writing his financial obituary while he was busy building Power into a cable dynasty tells you everything about how misunderstood this man's business brain really is. Real talk, fam. This is not a story about going broke. This is a story about what happens when a kid from South Jamaica, Queens, who learned to negotiate, survive and read the room before he was 13, walks into a federal bankruptcy courtroom carrying 20 years of that instinct in his pocket. Everybody else in that room was reacting. He was executing. He took a water deal and cashed it for 9 figures. He took a headphone lawsuit and a sex tape lawsuit and walked them into a Chapter 11 reorganization on his own terms. He sued his own lawyers, won, and used the win to close his own case. And he did all of it while filming a television show that would go on to define an entire era of premium cable. Ask yourself the question the culture forgot to ask back in 2015. If the man was really broke, why did every one of his businesses keep expanding while the case was open? Why did creditors get paid ahead of schedule? Why did power get bigger every season the bankruptcy was in the news? Why did the Fox deal, the Shreveport studio complex, the champagne label, the cognac label, the vodka partnership, the $1 million a night touring number, all keep climbing after 2017? Because 50 Cent was never broke. 50 Cent was leveraging. Drop your take in the comments and be honest with me. Do you think 50 planned the bankruptcy filing from the jump, or do you think it was a reaction he turned into a plan on the fly? Do you think there is another artist alive right now with the business brain to pull off the same move? And who do you want the next deep dive to cover? A rapper, a mogul, an athlete, somebody the culture already wrote off? Tell me in the comments, because y'all know I read them. And then tap the video on your screen right now, because if this one moved something in you, the next one is going to hit even harder. That is all I got for you, fam. I will see you in the next one.